Natural veg tan belts were one of my first bread and butter products that I made. It was back in 2008 and 2009. Not a lot of companies were selling them online, and the ones that were either selling them from Japan, so the yen was super high, so it was like $200 or $300, or they were American companies that were doing their best to make a good product, but they were bigger, so they had to cover their overhead. I was just a kid in a dorm room, so I ended up buying my own hides from a place out a few towns away from me. And I would drive and get them and take them back. Sometimes I would go on the train and I would make my leather belts, sell them for 40 or 50 bucks. And that was pretty much that. And what ended up happening was the people that were my age in college would buy a belt from me first. And then down the road, when they had a little more money and got a full-time job after school, they would end up buying a wallet from me. So that worked out well. But this video is not to tell you about my belt business. This video is to tell you about something that I fell for when I was younger and in business, freshly in business, and something that I've heard about is happening again. And I call it the Justin Timberlake scam. Justin Timberlake's pretty tricky. He's out to get you, and you really have to be careful. So let's get into it. The first thing you need to know is that it's not actually Justin Timberlake. And that's usually what gets people excited because, especially nowadays, there's all sorts of AI tools that can be used, from voice tools to pictures that can be generated. Back when I was younger and I fell for it, it was just a simple email. And the email said, "Hi, I'm Justin Timberlake stylist. We're doing a video shoot, and I'm wondering if you could send me some belts." I was very excited. I didn't ask for any credentials. And I said, "Absolutely. What would you like?" And I ended up sending some wallets, some belts. I don't really know why I thought that you needed a wallet for a photo shoot, but I sent it anyway. And after a few months, I emailed excitedly and said, "Hey, how'd the shoot go? Am I going to get to see anything in pictures, etc.?" Because at that time I had gotten in a few magazines. I had been in Esquire, I had been in GQ. And they said, yeah, I think it's coming out. I think it's going to be in, I forget the magazine, but it was something I hadn't really heard of. And I watched for it. And after about a year, when there was no Justin Timberlake picture in that magazine, I think I sent one more email and it had gone quiet. And so I spoke to someone in the industry and they said, "Oh yeah, that's a scam. You just basically sent free stuff to someone." And I checked the address that I'd sent it to. It was just a P.O. box in LA, I think. And so these days, I've heard that this is happening again. People are posing as stylists and industry people and asking artisans for free stuff. And, product seeding is very, very, probably way more popular these days because there are so many sort of smaller influencers, micro influencers, etc. And it's something to be careful of. You want to make sure that if you're going to spend the time to make something like a belt, then your time isn't going to waste and you're actually going to hopefully get your product placed somewhere. Now, we do want to talk about actual stylists and stuff. There is no guarantee that your product will get put somewhere if you send it in, but you at least want to make sure that it's going to an actual stylist or someone in the industry that can get your product placed. And a lot of times they'll try, and if they can't do it, then it was a lottery ticket and you at least had the chance, but you're not just sending someone who's scamming you a product. Now for this belt, I am actually machine sewing it. This belt is a little bit different than the belts that I made on my way up. And I'm using this new Texo machine, and this is a 9-ounce natural veg tan from Italy. It's a Vachetta. And this is just for a buddy of mine who ordered it a while back. Now this is 1.5 inches wide. I've hand cut it. And here I am skiving down the edges. I like to skive the edges of a belt because you're touching a belt a lot, so you don't really want sharp edges. And with this thick leather, you're going to probably get some sharp edges that can actually kind of like scratch or cut you. You'll see me using my hand and foot press a lot. This one's from Buckle Guy, and I love this press because, as you can see, these dies, I'm going to use 3 or 4 different dies sets to make this belt, and they all just screw on and unscrew from the same press in seconds. We're going to be using this new belt staple die as well. I have a full belt staple machine that I've been using for 10 years, but if you're someone who really finds that a bottleneck in your production of belts is stitching belt keepers closed. Belt staples, in my opinion, where it's at. No matter what sort of thread I use, I've always had belt keepers break on me. So what I'm going to do here is I'm cutting a 5/8 inch strip of the same 9-ounce leather that I have skived down to about 6 ounces. I'm going to get it square. Now you can do an overlap as well, but I just do it square on an affordable belt like this. If you're going to do a fully lined belt, that's another thing, but this is more utility. And the cool thing about belt staples is that they're metal. So they aren't going to fail due to abrasion like a thread would. Now, that's something that I really didn't think about until I had been making belts for 5 or 6 years, and I started getting keepers, pictures of keepers emailed to me saying, "Oh, this broke, can you send me a new one?" Which is no big deal if you're using Chicago screws to put your belt together. But if you're using rivets like I'm going to do here, you want to make sure that you use an attachment piece that's not going to fail. And solid brass is not going to fail on a belt keeper due to abrasion. Now, this staple die just screws into the hand and foot press. I'm using the foot attachment. And you put your staple on the bottom. You slide your keeper through that little U-shaped thing. And the staple goes right into the leather. And then on the underside of that anvil there, it's actually a little tiny anvil, there's a little divot that catches the prongs of the staple and rounds them and closes them shut, so it's nice and smooth for you. And this is my first time using it, so I'm just getting used to this. It's a little bit different than the one that I have in the shop, but it works great. And most importantly, my belt staple machine was like $500. This anvil is like $50. And as long as you have a press, you can use the die set, just the attachments. It's going to get you some nice, beautifully installed belt staples. The next thing I'm going to do on this belt is I'm going to put some water on the edges, burnish those up, and then we're going to punch holes for the rivets that I'm going to use. For this belt, I'm going to use rivets by request. I would usually use Chicago screws because then you can replace the buckle or do whatever you want. But I'm going to use 11mm solid brass double cap rivets. And these are going to be 15mm posts because we got a lot of leather to go through. The first thing I'm going to do, I have the body of the belt and then sort of the buckle head, I call it, if I'm doing a two-piece design. It probably has another name. I just have no idea what it is. I'm going to install the keeper around the body and the top part of the belt first. Then I'm going to install the buckle, and then everything's going to be secured with these 2 rivets. This is where your Chicago screws would go if you want to do that instead. My friend who ordered this belt asked for rivets, so that's what we're going to do for him. Now, once these are done, the rivets are just being held in place right now. We're going to go over to the press. We're going to change to the 11mm rivet die set. And then you'll see me here just adjust the height to make sure that it's exactly where I want it to set the rivet perfectly. You don't want to overset it so that you're punching holes through the leather because this press is strong. It'll do that. And you'll see me dialing in a little bit more. This is mostly by feel at this point because I use this thing hundreds of times every day. And that's pretty much it. After that's set, our belt's done. So we're just going to check it one more time, make sure that everything fits well. The belt is pretty simple. There's not much to it. And that's it. So thank you guys so much for watching. We are having our 40% off Black Friday sale, and I'll see you in the next one.